My name is Saren, I'm 24 years old, and I need you to understand something that's been eating me alive for months now. My parents looked me dead in the eye and told me they couldn't afford 2 plane tickets for the family vacation to Hawaii. So guess what they did? They sent my younger brother Jake without me. Just him. Not me. The daughter who's been paying half their mortgage for 2 years. Not me. The one who gave up my college fund to keep their lights on. Not me. The one who's been their unpaid maid, babysitter, and therapist since I was 16. They sent him. Do you want to know what hurts the most? It wasn't even about the money. It was never about the money. It was about the fact that they didn't even hesitate. They didn't lose sleep over it. They didn't sit down and think, maybe Saren deserves this trip after everything she's done for us. No. They just decided, like they always do, that I'm the one who can handle disappointment. I'm the one who's strong enough to be left behind. I'm the one who doesn't need things like vacations or consideration or basic human decency from the people who are supposed to love me unconditionally. You know what's twisted? They actually expected me to help Jake pack. They wanted me to fold his clothes and make sure he had sunscreen and act excited for him while my heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces. They wanted me to smile and wave goodbye at the airport like some kind of martyr who's just grateful to watch other people live the life I've been funding with my own sacrifice. Before I tell you what happened when they came back from their precious family bonding trip that apparently didn't need to include their actual family provider, I need you to do something for me. Please subscribe to this channel, because this story deserves to be heard, and there are probably thousands of other forgotten kids out there who need to know they're not alone in this hell. Also, comment below and tell me where you're watching from, because I want to know how far this pain reaches. I want to know if what happened to me is happening to families all over the world, or if I just won the lottery for the most selfish parents on the planet. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what I did next. You're going to want to know how a lifetime of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the expendable one, finally caught up with them in ways they never saw coming. You need to understand how we got here, because this vacation wasn't just one isolated incident of cruelty. This was the breaking point of 24 years of being treated like the family workhorse, while Jake got to be the precious prince who could do no wrong. It started when I was 8 years old and Jake was 5. My dad lost his job, and suddenly I wasn't a kid anymore. I was the one making sure Jake had clean clothes for school while Mom cried in her bedroom about bills. I was the one walking him to kindergarten every morning and picking him up every afternoon because my parents were too stressed to handle basic parenting duties. And you know what everyone said? Saren is so mature for her age. Saren is such a good big sister. Look how responsible she is. Responsible. That word makes me sick now. Do you know what responsible actually meant in my family? It meant I didn't get to complain when my birthday got forgotten because Jake needed new soccer cleats. It meant I had to give up my allowance so he could go to summer camp with his friends. It meant when Jake broke something, I was expected to either fix it or take the blame because Saren should have been watching him. When I was 12, I started babysitting other people's kids to earn money. Not for myself, God forbid. For the family. For Jake's school supplies, for groceries, for the electric bill that was always 1 month away from getting shut off. My parents praised me for being so helpful, while Jake got to play video games and have friends over like a normal kid. High school was worse. Jake joined every sport, every club, every activity that cost money. And who do you think paid for all of it? Me. Working 20 hours a week at a grocery store, coming home exhausted to find Jake's dirty dishes in the sink and his homework undone because he was too tired from practice. Meanwhile, I was expected to tutor him in math because his grades were slipping and Saren is so good at explaining things. I gave up going to college right away because we couldn't afford it. Actually, let me correct that. We couldn't afford for both of us to go to college, and naturally, Jake's future was more important than mine. He was going to be a doctor, they said. He had so much potential. What about my potential? What about my dreams? Those didn't matter because I was the reliable one. I was the one who would figure it out eventually. So while Jake went off to his fancy university on my dime, I stayed home, working full-time and paying half the mortgage. Half the mortgage on a house I couldn't even call my own because every decision was made around Jake's schedule, Jake's needs, Jake's comfort. I slept in the same tiny bedroom I'd had since I was 10 while Jake's room got renovated twice to be more suitable for a college student. And the worst part? My parents convinced themselves this was normal. They actually believed they were being good parents by letting me sacrifice everything for my brother's success. They called it building character and teaching me the value of hard work. But what they were really doing was teaching me that my worth was measured by how much I could give up for other people's happiness. Jake never questioned it either. Why would he? He was living the life of a spoiled prince while I played the role of Cinderella, minus the fairy godmother and happy ending. He got new clothes while I wore thrift store finds. He got family dinners at restaurants while I ate leftovers standing up in the kitchen because I was too tired to sit down. He got emotional support and encouragement for every tiny achievement while I got lectures about being more grateful for the opportunity to serve my family. For 16 years, I swallowed my anger. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that once Jake graduated and got a good job, things would change. My parents would finally see what I'd sacrificed. They'd finally appreciate everything I'd done. They'd finally treat me like their daughter instead of their unpaid servant. But that vacation announcement shattered every delusion I'd been clinging to. When they said they could only afford one ticket, when they didn't even consider that maybe the daughter who'd been funding their lives deserved a break, when they looked at me like I was supposed to understand and accept being left behind again, I realized something that made my blood run cold. This wasn't going to change. Ever. In their minds, I wasn't their child. I was their solution. I was the one who fixed problems and asked for nothing in return. I was the one who could always be counted on to understand, to sacrifice, to disappear when it was convenient. 24 years old, and I finally understood that I'd been playing a game where the rules were designed to make sure I never won. The announcement came on a Tuesday evening while I was cooking dinner for everyone, like I did every night after working a 10-hour shift at my job. Jake was home from college for spring break, sprawled across the couch like he owned the place, which in his mind, he probably did. Mom and Dad were sitting at the kitchen table, whispering about something with these guilty expressions on their faces. I should have known something was wrong by the way they kept glancing at me and then quickly looking away. But I was too tired to play detective. I was focused on getting food on the table so I could finally sit down for the first time in 14 hours. "Saren, honey, we need to talk to you about something," Mom said, using that fake sweet voice she always used when she was about to ask me for another favor or deliver bad news that somehow became my responsibility to handle. I turned around, still holding the wooden spoon I'd been stirring pasta with, and I could see it in their faces. Whatever they were about to say was going to hurt. Dad couldn't even look at me directly. He was studying his hands like they held the secrets of the universe. "We've been saving up for a family vacation," Dad started, and for just one stupid second, my heart jumped. A family vacation. When was the last time we'd done something fun together? When was the last time I got to just be their daughter instead of their personal ATM and household manager? "That's wonderful," I said, actually smiling for the first time in weeks. "Where are we going?" The silence that followed should have prepared me, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. "Well, that's the thing," Mom said, wringing her hands. "We've been looking at flights to Hawaii, and we can only afford 2 tickets right now." My stomach dropped, but I still didn't understand. 2 tickets? But there are 4 of us. "We know, sweetheart, but money's been tight, and we thought." Dad trailed off, finally looking at me with these pathetic, pleading eyes like he was the victim in this situation. "You thought what?" My voice was getting sharper, but I couldn't control it anymore. "We thought maybe you'd understand." Mom jumped in quickly. "You're so good at understanding when we need to make hard choices. And Jake really needs this break from school. He's been so stressed with his studies." Jake. Of course it was about Jake. It was always about Jake. "So you're taking Jake to Hawaii and I'm staying here?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. I needed to hear them say it out loud. I needed them to own this decision completely. "Just this once," Dad said weakly. "When we save up more money, we'll plan something special for you. Just this once." Like every other "just this once" that had turned into my entire life story. "Just this once, you can give up your college fund. Just this once, you can work extra hours to pay for Jake's textbooks. Just this once, you can sacrifice your happiness so your brother can have everything he wants. He needs this, Saren, Mom added, like that explained anything. College is so demanding, and he's been working so hard. Working so hard. Jake, who called me crying every time he had to do his own laundry. Jake, who still expected me to write his papers for him when he was too busy with fraternity parties. Jake, who had never worked a day in his life, but somehow needed a vacation from the stress of having everything handed to him on a silver platter. What about what I need? I asked, and the question hung in the air like a foreign concept they'd never considered before. You're so strong, honey, Mom said, reaching over to pat my hand like that was supposed to make everything better. You've always been able to handle disappointment better than Jake. He's more sensitive. Sensitive. Jake was sensitive, but I was supposed to be indestructible. Jake needed comfort and support and expensive vacations, but I was supposed to be grateful for the opportunity to fund his happiness while getting nothing in return. Besides, Dad added, someone needs to stay home and take care of the house. And there it was. The real reason. They didn't just want to exclude me from their family vacation. They wanted me to stay home and be their house sitter, their unpaid security system, their reliable backup plan for anything that might go wrong while they were living it up on the beach with my money. I stood there, wooden spoon still in my hand, staring at the three people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and I felt something inside me break. Not bend. Break. Completely and irreparably. I didn't say anything else that night. I finished cooking dinner, served it to them like the good little servant I'd always been, and went to my room. But something had fundamentally shifted inside me. That broken thing wasn't sadness anymore. It was rage. Pure, white-hot rage that had been building for 24 years and finally found its target. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to them laugh downstairs as they planned their vacation without me, and I made a decision that would change everything. I was done. Not just with this vacation. Not just with being overlooked. I was done with this entire toxic dynamic that had turned me into a ghost in my own family. They wanted to know what it was like without their reliable Saren? They were about to find out. I waited until they left for the airport 3 days later. I even drove them there because they expected it, and I wanted to see the look on their faces when they realized what I'd done. Jake was chattering excitedly about snorkeling and beach bars, completely oblivious to the fact that he was going on a vacation paid for by the sister he'd never once thanked. Mom and Dad kept making these awkward comments about how I'd have the house to myself, like it was some kind of consolation prize. We'll bring you back something nice, Mom said as she hugged me goodbye, and I almost laughed. Something nice. Like a cheap souvenir could make up for a lifetime of being treated like I didn't matter. Don't worry about me, I said, and I meant it in ways they couldn't possibly understand. The minute their plane took off, I went home and started packing. Not just for a few days. Everything. Every piece of clothing, every book, every photograph, every single thing that belonged to me. It took me 8 hours to pack up 24 years of my life, and you know what the most pathetic part was? It all fit in my car. 24 years of existing in this house, and I had so few possessions that actually mattered to me that they fit in a Honda Civic. As I packed, I kept finding evidence of how little space I'd been allowed to take up in this family. Jake had 2 closets full of clothes, while mine barely filled 1 suitcase. His room had posters and memorabilia and expensive electronics, while mine looked like a hotel room someone had been staying in temporarily for 2 decades. Even my own bedroom felt like I was just borrowing it from the real family. I found the folder where I kept track of every penny I'd contributed to household expenses over the past 6 years. $28,000. $28,000 I'd given to keep this family afloat while Jake spent 4 times that amount on his college education that I was also partially funding. $28,000 that apparently didn't earn me enough consideration for a plane ticket to Hawaii. I left the folder on the kitchen counter with a note. Since you can do math when it comes to plane tickets, I thought you might want to see these numbers too. But I wasn't just taking my things. I was taking myself. Completely. I'd already found a studio apartment across town and put down a deposit using money from the secret savings account they didn't know about. I'd been squirreling away small amounts for 2 years, telling myself it was for emergencies. Well, this qualified as an emergency. An emergency evacuation from a family that had forgotten I was a person instead of a resource. I left my house key on the kitchen counter next to the folder. I left the spare garage door opener. I left the passwords to the streaming services I'd been paying for. I even left a list of all the monthly bills that would now be their responsibility again, like they should have been all along. But the most important thing I left was a letter. Not angry, not vindictive, just honest. I've spent my entire adult life being your solution to every problem while you've treated me like I don't have problems of my own. I'm not your backup plan anymore. I'm not your built-in babysitter, house cleaner, or financial safety net. I'm your daughter, and until you can treat me like one, you won't be seeing me. I drove away from that house at sunset, and for the first time in my entire life, I felt free. They came back from Hawaii on a Sunday night. I know because Jake started calling me at 11 p.m., over and over until I finally answered just to make it stop. "Saren, what the hell did you do?" His voice was panicked, almost frantic. "Mom and Dad are losing their minds. The house is empty. There's some weird folder on the counter with numbers, and there's a note saying you moved out. This is insane." "Is it?" I asked, my voice eerily calm. "Is it really insane that I finally stopped letting all of you treat me like hired help?" We don't treat you like hired help," he stammered, but even he didn't sound convinced. "Jake, when's the last time you thanked me for anything? When's the last time any of you asked me what I wanted instead of just assuming I'd go along with whatever was convenient for everyone else?" Silence. Long, uncomfortable silence that told me everything I needed to know. I don't know," he finally admitted. "But you can't just disappear like this. Mom's crying, Dad's pacing around the house like a crazy person, and they keep saying they don't understand why you're being so dramatic." Dramatic. Of course, that's what they called it when I finally stood up for myself. "Meet me for coffee tomorrow," I said. "If you actually want to understand what happened, meet me at the Starbucks on 5th Street at 2 o'clock. Come alone." He showed up 20 minutes early, looking like he hadn't slept. His tan from Hawaii made the guilt on his face even more obvious. I ordered my coffee and sat across from him, watching him fidget with his hands like he was trying to figure out what to say. "I need you to be honest with me," I started. "Do you think the way our family works is normal?" "What do you mean?" he asked, but his eyes were already darting away from mine. "I mean, do you think it's normal that I've been paying half the mortgage while you go to college? Do you think it's normal that I work full-time and then come home to cook dinner for everyone? Do you think it's normal that when there was money for one vacation, nobody even considered that I might deserve it?" His face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw my little brother instead of the spoiled prince I'd been resenting. "I knew it wasn't fair," he whispered. "I've known for years that it wasn't fair." "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because I'm a selfish coward," he said, tears starting to roll down his cheeks. "Because I liked having someone take care of everything for me. Because every time I thought about standing up for you, I remembered how good I had it, and I kept my mouth shut." At least he was being honest. More honest than our parents had ever been. "Do you know what it felt like," I continued, my voice getting harder, "to watch you pack for Hawaii while I stood there knowing I'd never get that chance? Do you know what it felt like to drive you to the airport for a vacation I helped pay for, knowing that none of you thought I deserved to be included?" "I felt sick about it," he said. "The whole trip, I felt sick. I couldn't enjoy the beach or the food or anything because I kept thinking about you at home, probably working or cleaning or doing something for us like you always do. I kept telling Mom and Dad we should have found a way to bring you, but they said you were fine with it." "They said I was fine with it?" The rage was building again. Did they actually think I was fine with it, or did they just tell themselves that so they could enjoy their vacation without feeling guilty? "I don't know," he said miserably. I think they've convinced themselves that you don't want the same things other people want. Like you're this perfect, selfless person who's just naturally happy to give up everything for everyone else." "I'm not selfless, Jake. I'm angry. I've been angry for years, and I'm tired of pretending that being responsible means I don't deserve to be treated like a human being." We sat there in silence for a long time. Finally, he looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I want to change," he said. "I don't want to be the person who lets his sister sacrifice everything while I take it all for granted. I don't want to be like them." "Then prove it," I said. "Don't just tell me you want to change. Show me." If you've ever been the forgotten kid in your family, the one who everyone expects to understand and sacrifice while your siblings get everything handed to them, hit the like button on this video. And maybe subscribe so more people can understand what it's really like to be the family's built-in problem solver who never gets her own problem solved. Because this conversation with Jake was just the beginning. Jake started texting me updates almost immediately, and honestly, watching my parents' perfect little system fall apart was more satisfying than I want to admit. For 24 years, I'd been their invisible support structure, and now that I was gone, the whole house of cards was collapsing. The first week, Jake told me Dad tried to cook dinner and nearly burned down the kitchen because he didn't know you're supposed to add water to boxed mac and cheese. Mom had a complete meltdown when she realized the bills were due and she didn't know the passwords to any of the online accounts I'd been managing. They spent 3 hours on the phone with the electric company trying to prove they lived at their own address. Dad keeps walking around muttering about how he didn't realize how much you did, Jake texted me on Wednesday. And Mom found that folder you left and she's been crying over it for 2 days straight. She keeps saying she had no idea you'd contributed that much money. No idea. Right. Because when I handed them cash for the mortgage every month, they thought it was monopoly money. By the second week, things were getting worse. The house was falling apart because nobody knew how to maintain it. The washing machine broke, and instead of calling a repairman like I always did, they just let dirty laundry pile up for days. The grass was dying because Dad forgot to water it. Mom tried to grocery shop, but came home with random ingredients that didn't make meals, just expensive chaos. They spent $40 on organic quinoa yesterday, and then realized they don't know what quinoa is, Jake reported. Mom's eating cereal for dinner again because she can't figure out meal planning. But the real breakdown came when they got the first full month of bills without my contribution. Suddenly, money was tighter than they'd experienced in 6 years. They had to start making choices about what to pay first, what to put off, what luxuries to cut. All the things I'd been quietly managing by supplementing their income with my own. Dad had to cancel his golf club membership, Jake told me during one of our coffee meetings. And Mom's talking about getting a part-time job for the first time since I was 5. They keep saying they don't understand how you made everything work so smoothly. I made it work by sacrificing my own life, that's how. I made it work by never buying myself anything I wanted, never going out with friends, never taking a day off when I was sick because someone had to keep the machine running. The neighbors started talking too. Mrs. Patterson from next door apparently asked Mom where I was, and when Mom tried to give some vague answer about me finding my independence, Mrs. Patterson said, "Well, it's about time that girl got to live her own life instead of taking care of everyone else's." Even the neighbors had noticed. Even people outside our family could see what my parents had been blind to for years. "They're fighting more," Jake admitted during our third coffee meeting. Not screaming fights, but these tense, whispered arguments about money and responsibilities and how they're going to manage everything. Dad keeps saying he thought they raised us to be independent, and Mom keeps crying that she never meant for it to get this complicated. Never meant for it to get complicated. Like 24 years of treating me like their personal assistant was some kind of accident that happened gradually without their knowledge. The breaking point came when their dishwasher broke and flooded the kitchen floor. Instead of dealing with it themselves, they called Jake at college, crying and begging him to come home and handle it because they didn't know what to do. They wanted me to miss my finals, Jake told me, his voice full of disgust. They actually expected me to drop everything and come fix their mess, just like they always expected you to do. Except when I said no, they completely fell apart. They couldn't understand why their children weren't jumping to solve their problems anymore. That's when I knew they were finally starting to understand what they've lost. Not just their live-in problem solver, but the daughter they'd taken for granted for so long that they forgot she was a person with her own needs and dreams. 3 weeks after the dishwasher disaster, I got a text from Mom. Not a demand, not an assumption that I'd fix their latest crisis, but an actual request. "Would you be willing to meet us for coffee? We need to talk to you about some things. Please." The please almost broke me. In 24 years, I couldn't remember my mother ever saying please when she asked me to do something. It was always just expected that I'd comply. I agreed to meet them at a neutral cafe downtown, Not the Starbucks where Jake and I had been meeting, but somewhere new where none of us had history. I got there first and chose a corner table where I could see the door, and when they walked in, I almost didn't recognize them. Mom looked like she'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing one of Dad's old sweaters over yoga pants that had stains on them. Dad looked hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made him confident and left behind this uncertain shell of a man who kept checking his phone nervously. They sat down across from me, both of them avoiding eye contact, and for the first time in my life, my parents looked small. Defeated. Lost without their compass. "Thank you for coming," Dad said, his voice hoarse. "We weren't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either," I replied honestly. "But I'm here." Mom reached across the table like she was going to grab my hand, then stopped herself when she saw my expression. "Saren, we owe you an apology. A real one. Not the kind where we say sorry and then expect everything to go back to normal. We've been doing a lot of thinking," Dad added. "And talking. And we've realized some things about how we've treated you that we're ashamed of." I stayed silent. They needed to say this without me making it easier for them. "We leaned on you too much," Mom continued, tears starting to flow. "We made you responsible for things that should have been our responsibility. We treated you like you were our partner in running the family instead of our daughter, who deserved to be taken care of. We told ourselves it was building character," Dad said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We convinced ourselves that we were teaching you valuable life skills and that you were naturally more responsible than Jake. But the truth is, we were just taking the easy way out. It was easier to let you handle everything than to do the hard work of parenting ourselves." "And the money," Mom said, pulling out the folder I'd left on their counter. "We knew you were contributing to household expenses, but seeing it all written down like this. Saren, you've given us almost $30,000 over the past 6 years. $30,000 while you were living like a college student in a dorm room in your own family's house." "We thought you didn't mind," Dad said, and then immediately shook his head. "No, that's not true. We didn't think about whether you minded or not. We just accepted your help because it made our lives easier, and we never asked what it was costing you." I could feel the rage building again, but underneath it was something else. Something that might have been hope, if I was brave enough to let myself feel it. "The vacation was the worst thing," Mom said, her voice breaking completely. "When we said we could only afford 2 tickets, we weren't thinking about you at all. We were thinking about Jake's stress and his needs and what would be best for him. We didn't even consider that you might want to go, might need a break, might deserve to be included in your own family's vacation. We didn't think you didn't need anything," Dad said, looking directly at me for the first time. "We thought you wouldn't complain. We thought you'd understand and accept it like you always do. And that's so much worse, isn't it? We took advantage of your kindness and your love for this family, and we convinced ourselves it was normal." "Jake told us what you said to him," Mom added. "About how we convinced ourselves you don't want the same things other people want. And he was right. We did convince ourselves of that because it was easier than facing the fact that we were asking our daughter to sacrifice her entire life for our comfort." They sat there, both of them crying now, waiting for me to respond. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I let myself feel something other than anger. "I need you to understand something," I said slowly. "I didn't leave because I don't love you. I left because loving you is killing me. I was disappearing inside my own life, becoming nothing but a solution to your problems, and I couldn't do it anymore." "We know," Dad said. "We know, and we're sorry. We're so sorry, Saren." "Sorry isn't enough," I said, and I watched them both flinch. "If you want any kind of relationship with me going forward, things have to change. Really change. Not just temporarily until I come back and make everything easier again." "What do you need from us?" Mom asked. "I need you to start taking care of yourselves financially. No more contributions from me to bills or mortgages or household expenses. I need you to treat Jake the same way you've been treating me. Let him contribute to the family instead of just taking from it. And I need you both to go to therapy. Individual therapy, to figure out why you thought this dynamic was acceptable." They nodded, both of them, without hesitation or argument. "And if you can't do those things," I continued, "then we don't have a relationship at all." Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Not the usual casual message about family drama or updates on our parents' latest crisis. This one was different. I talked to mom and dad after your meeting. I'm going to therapy too. Already made an appointment for next week. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. You don't have to do therapy just because I asked them to. His reply came immediately. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. I need to figure out why I was okay with watching you sacrifice everything while I took it all for granted. That's not the person I want to be. Three dots appeared and disappeared several times before his next message came through. I also talked to the financial aid office at school. I'm going to start taking out student loans for next year instead of letting you pay for my education. And I got a part-time job at the campus library. It's not much, but it's a start. Part of me wanted to tell him it was too little too late, that one conversation and a few good intentions couldn't erase years of selfish behavior. But a bigger part of me was proud of him for taking these steps without being forced to. Jake, I typed back, I need you to understand something. If mom and dad don't follow through on the changes they promised, you have to choose your own path. Don't let them drag you back into the old patterns just because it's easier. I won't, he replied. I saw what that dynamic did to you, and I saw what it almost did to me. I don't want to be 30 years old and still expecting my family to solve all my problems. We met for coffee again 2 days later, and I could see something different in his face. Less of the entitled, carefree attitude he'd carried his whole life, and more awareness of the world around him. I've been thinking about all the times I should have said something, he told me. All the times I watched you give up something you wanted, so I could have what I wanted, and I just let it happen. I was a coward, and I was selfish, and I let you down when you needed your brother to stand up for you. You were a kid for most of it, I said, trying to be fair. I was 19 when you gave up your college fund for my tuition, he shot back. I wasn't a kid then. I was just comfortable with the arrangement because it benefited me. For the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I might get my brother back. Not the spoiled prince who took everything for granted, but the real Jake who was finally ready to grow up and be part of a family instead of just taking from one. You want to know what real revenge looks like? It's not screaming or getting even or making them suffer the way they made you suffer. Real revenge is building a life so good that you realize you never needed them to validate your worth in the first place. My studio apartment became my sanctuary. For the first time in my life, every single thing in my space was chosen by me for me. I bought bright yellow curtains because I liked them, not because they matched some family color scheme. I ate dinner at 6 p.m. instead of waiting until 8 p.m. for everyone else to be ready. I played music as loud as I wanted, took long baths without someone banging on the door, and fell asleep reading books instead of reviewing Jake's homework or planning tomorrow's family logistics. But the biggest change happened at work. Without the constant stress of managing everyone else's lives, I had mental energy to focus on my actual career for the first time ever. I started volunteering for projects I'd always been too exhausted to take on. I spoke up in meetings instead of staying silent. I pitched ideas that had been sitting in the back of my mind for months, while I dealt with family crises. 3 months after I moved out, my supervisor called me into her office. I thought I was in trouble for something, but instead she offered me a promotion I didn't even know existed. Saren, I don't know what's changed, but your work has been exceptional lately. You seem more confident, more focused. We'd like to offer you the assistant manager position in the marketing department. Assistant manager. With a salary that was $15,000 more than what I was making. $15,000 that I could actually keep for myself instead of immediately redistributing to family members who never once asked what I wanted to do with my own money. I accepted the promotion, and for the first time in my adult life, I opened a savings account that was just mine. Not an emergency fund for family crises, not a Jake's college expenses fund, not a backup plan for when dad loses his job fund. Just mine. Money I could use for things I wanted. Vacations I wanted to take. Dreams I wanted to pursue. And speaking of dreams, I did something I'd been putting off for 6 years. I applied to finish my college degree. Night classes, online courses, whatever it took to get the education I'd sacrificed so Jake could have his. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was finally able to afford my own education because I'd stopped paying for everyone else's life. But the most powerful realization came when I was sitting in my apartment one evening, reviewing job applications for the team I was now managing, and I understood something that changed everything. All those years, I thought I was the weak one. I thought I was the one who needed to prove her worth by being useful, by being indispensable, by being the family's solution to every problem. But I was wrong. I was never the weak one. I was the one holding the entire family together. I was the backbone, the foundation, the engine that kept everything running smoothly. They didn't keep me around because I was pathetic and couldn't survive on my own. They kept me around because without me, their whole comfortable world fell apart. Do you know how I figured this out? Because the minute I left, everything collapsed. The house, the finances, the daily routines, the emotional management. Everything I'd been handling so seamlessly that they'd forgotten it even needed to be handled. I wasn't their burden. I was their lifeline, and they'd been too entitled and comfortable to appreciate what they had. Jake was right when he said they'd convinced themselves I didn't want the same things other people want. But the truth is even worse than that. They'd convinced themselves I didn't deserve the same things other people deserve. They'd decided my happiness was less important than their comfort. My dreams were less valuable than Jake's potential. My needs were less urgent than their convenience. But here's what they never understood. I didn't stay all those years because I was weak or because I didn't have options. I stayed because I loved them, and I kept hoping that love would eventually be returned in equal measure. I kept believing that if I just proved myself enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, they would finally see my worth and treat me accordingly. What I learned in my little studio apartment, working my new job, planning my own future for the first time in my adult life, is that love shouldn't require you to disappear. Love shouldn't cost you your identity, your dreams, your basic dignity as a human being. Real love makes space for you to exist fully, not just as a supporting character in everyone else's story. If you believe that walking away from people who take you for granted can be the most powerful thing you'll ever do, share this video. And subscribe so this message reaches someone else who needs to hear that their worth isn't measured by how much they can sacrifice for other people who never learned to appreciate what they were receiving. So here's where I need your help, because I'm standing at a crossroads and I honestly don't know which path leads to the life I actually want to live. It's been 6 months since I walked away from my family. 6 months since I stopped being their solution and started being my own person. And in those 6 months, things have changed in ways I never expected. My parents have been going to therapy, individually and together. Jake has been paying his own way through college and contributing to household expenses for the first time in his life. They've sent me updates through Jake, not demands or guilt trips, just honest reports about the work they're doing to understand how they treated me and why it was wrong. Last week, Dad sent me a letter. Not a text, not an email, but an actual handwritten letter apologizing for specific things he did and acknowledging specific ways he failed me as a parent. He didn't ask me to come back. He didn't make promises about the future. He just took responsibility for his actions and told me he understood why I had to leave. Mom started paying me back the money I contributed to household expenses over the years. Not because I asked for it, but because she said it was never fair that I gave up my financial security for their comfort. She's sending me $500 a month, and she said she'll keep sending it until every penny is repaid. Jake got his first apartment near campus and invited me to see it last weekend. Not his old room at Mom and Dad's house, but his own place that he's paying for with his own work. When I visited, he cooked dinner for me. Badly, but he cooked it himself, and we talked about his therapy sessions and the things he's learning about privilege and family dynamics and how to be a better person. So now I have to decide, do I let them earn their way back into my life slowly, carefully, with boundaries and conditions and the understanding that I'll never again be their built-in problem solver? Or do I walk away permanently, accepting that some damage is too deep to repair and some patterns are too ingrained to really change? Part of me believes people can grow, that families can heal, that love can learn to look different than it did before. Part of me thinks my parents and Jake are doing the work because they finally understand what they lost when they lost me. But another part of me knows how good my life is without the constant weight of their expectations and needs. I know how peaceful it feels to live for myself, to make decisions based on what I want instead of what everyone else requires from me. Which ending would you choose if you were in my place? Ending A. Walk away permanently and build a completely new life with people who saw your worth from the beginning, people who never needed to learn how to treat you with basic respect. Or ending B. Let them earn their way back slowly, with strict boundaries and the understanding that the old dynamic is dead forever. Tell me in the comments which choice you think leads to real happiness, and tell me why. Because honestly, I need to know what you would do if you were the forgotten child who finally remembered she deserved better.